Hello, everyone, and greetings from West Lafayette, the Daniels School of Business. I'm Rich Reifel. I'm a member of the Leadership Cabinet in the Dean's Office here at the Daniels School. I want to thank you all for joining us today for a discussion about artificial intelligence and our new Master of Business and Technology. I'm joined today by Jim Miller, one of our advisory board members that helped us put this program together, and our academic director for the program, Professor Mohammed Rahman. We've got a series of questions we're going to moderate today, and we're welcoming questions from the audience as well. So if you want to put those in the chat, feel free, and we'll pause on those as they come in. To get us started, I wanted to ask Jim, if you could. You've been an industry executive for many years, had a very successful career in technology, and you've been very helpful to us in designing this program. So if you could, just give us a little bit of your background and tell the audience a little bit about why you thought this program was particularly timely and how you've engaged in helping us put the curriculum together.
Yeah, thank you, and good afternoon. It's great to be here. It's interesting. Well, first of all, I'm a Purdue grad. I went to Purdue undergrad and graduated a long time ago in 1986 with an engineering degree. And then I studied business at MIT, and I studied engineering at MIT during grad school. And it's interesting, I went back into industry in 1993 when I joined Intel post grad school. And in retrospect, I've had a career that really has been, we didn't call it digital or technology, but when I think about my career, and I was an early Amazonian, I headed up operations at a large telecom company. I ran the rollout operations for Google and Alphabet and was the CTO of a large e-commerce company called Wayfair, among other things. There's been one common thread that's run through all those experiences. Everything's been analytics, data, information technology centric. And, I sit on a number of corporate boards today, and the most present topics today are technology, digital, cyber, and now, of course, with the advent of large language models, AI. So in my opinion, it's, if you go back 10, 15 years ago, you could probably separate technology and business. And if you looked at conversations that were going on the boards, it was technology was important, but it wasn't integral to how companies work. And today, every conversation at the board right now has some AI facet to it. Now, that's probably a little bit overblown in terms of, there's a bit of a hype cycle that we're in right now. But again, if you look at the future of business, it's all about the melding of technology and business principles. So when I think about a program like the Master of Business and Technology, that's in its sweet spot. And it's so relevant, and it's only going to gain more importance with even a more AI and machine learning intense world that we're obviously in right now.
Thanks, Jim. So for the potential students listening online, Jim is an excellent example of kind of resources that we're putting behind this program with practical knowledge of how these technological issues are coming to the fore in industry. And we've married those with a revived curriculum that is tech-infused. This supports one of the Dean's key pillars, that STEM equals business here at Daniels. Every business is now a tech business. So with that in mind, right, Mohammed, when you took the rudiments of many of the courses that we had here at Daniels, an MBA curriculum that they had, and you said, I want to launch this MBT program specifically for this purpose. Talk a little bit about how you came to that and how your background in academia and your research informed your thinking.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jim, too, for all the help. So, hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Mohammed Rahman here. I'm the academic director for Master of Business and Technology program here at Purdue, also the Daniels School Chair of Management at Purdue. So, I've been here on the faculty for more than 10 years. And, I've been seeing this whole transition in industry where we see that, the education is not catching up to what industry needed. Right. So like if you look at the industry, the conversation is how do we really sort of center our business around technology, take technology as something that we actually now use for competitive advantage rather than just operational sort of element. And that's true with data, that's true with analytics, because now we want to go beyond just efficiency. We want to really go around value creation and value capture. And that's what we thought about, okay, how can we bring a degree? How can we modernize our MBA, right? So like the MBA has been the flagship for all business schools, right? And all business schools are generally, tied to this notion that, okay, we have to somehow morph whatever we have into something new. But what we got an opportunity here is that we got a new dean, we got a new mandate, newly launched business school, where we had the idea that, okay, why don't we try to really tackle the problem the way it should be tackled? So we went to the program curriculum design where we said, you know what, let's just think about what courses should we put in there rather than thinking about what courses do we have and how can we take some courses and put something together. That's what most tech MBAs look like. You take your existing set of courses, you try to mold it some ways, and you fit them together for a curriculum. That's not what we did. We said, you know what does it mean to run a business with technology? What is a technology-driven business? How do you think about technologies, emerging technologies that have come out and align business models around it? We never had a class like this. We thought about this class because we need that class. How do we think about technology governance? Because there's a lot of antitrust issues. There are a lot of other issues that you have to think about as we think about AI, privacy issues, cybersecurity issues. So we took everything as what needs to happen as we train these students for the future they're going to have, and then put together a curriculum. Now I went to my colleagues who are going to teach the accounting classes, the finance classes, that had been the backbone of understanding business. But still there, you still have to understand the technology component becoming important. If you look at a balance sheet, you could analyze that balance sheet, but you still can sort of see, okay, what kind of technology investments have been made and what the payoff has been. So those kind of things, we made sure everything is infused in all our curriculum. So this curriculum, and then we went to the advisory board. We went to people like Jim and others to say, what do you think of this curriculum? We also went to people where we said, you have no curriculum. Can you tell me what should I teach? And then we combined the two to really come up with what we have.
So that's a great history. I should also add that Mohammed and I are involved in a lot of executive education here at Daniels, and we work with a lot of companies that are implementing AI and other technology strategies. And we've taken some of the practices that we've learned from these companies, and we're applying those in the classroom and using those late breaking and current strategies that these companies are using to inform our curriculum. So this isn't simply putting a new wrapper on a strategy course. And maybe adding a case study to an existing course. It's saying, how do I teach strategy through a technology lens? So Jim, I'm going to turn to you with a question. And given your experience, so your resume is incredible, and that list of companies that you've worked for is really impressive. Maybe you could give us an example of, and I know you're on the board of a number of companies too, and you serve as an operating partner to various VC funds. Maybe you could give us an anonymized example of an opportunity that you've seen recently in business and how you viewed that through a technology lens. Knowing that you have an MBA and an engineering degree and all of that, you're obviously well educated from a classroom standpoint, but how is the way you're analyzing business problems changing in light of all the technology that business is having to deal with today?
Yeah, there's so many examples right now. I'll give you a couple. So first of all, one is Wayfair. When I actually, before I was the chief technology officer, I was on the board for 4 years. And I remember, we have millions of items in our catalog. And the way that we secured those items or got those into the catalog was we had photography. And for us, it was a large expense item where, goods would come in. And if you think about like a couch can be 14 different fabrics. It can be, a number of different colors, et cetera, et cetera. And you look at the combinatorials of that, and what we needed a different solution. So the two founders came to us, and they were they were basically putting a proposal on the table to spend millions on digitizing the entire catalog. And they were actually, what they were proposing was we go build math models for how to digitize that catalog. And instead of having digital photography on the site, it really was now a complete, digital generated representation of every item in the catalog, and that's millions of items, and it's tens of hundreds of millions of different combinatorials. And what we realized was that, and it was, by the way, it was not cheap. It was millions of dollars that we were going to go spend, and we debated about it as a board, and this was back in 2017/2018. And what we realized was, and the two founders put a compelling case on the table where essentially they said, look, when you think about the world of AI, and they were smart enough to be able to look around the corner and see what was on the horizon. They essentially said, we can start to do things like auto tagging. So if we have a digital representation of every item in the catalog, now we can essentially build somebody's room and integrate it into a digital design tool. We can actually use ML technology, machine learning technology, to auto tag it in a way that says the style of that particular item could be mid-century modern, or it could appeal to this type of person, or it's related to this type of item. If you're going to buy a lamp, you may choose this because the style is similar. And what it enabled us to do was, and by the way, the investment was a large investment up front, but then it allowed us to do and solve all these problems, even today, where we can do digital insertion of a item into a room. We can use AR, and we've integrated that with the iPhone and with Android into their AR technology to be able to digitally insert an item into your room using augmented reality. And we basically created a designer in a box. All of that technology was enabled, and that capability was enabled by the digitization of that catalog. Now, I'll give you another example. I sit on the board of a Gen AI company in the customer service area called LivePerson. And I won't go into the specifics about what LivePerson does, but essentially, it's humanizing bots. And everybody's had experiences with calling into chat. And to be completely candid, it's not a great experience. And it has not been a great experience. Everybody wants to talk to a live, no pun intended, a live person. And I've had my own examples in the last couple of weeks of that. Well, what you're seeing with technology is, and AI is really the humanization of those conversations. And it's not only that you're talking to somebody and it's almost indistinguishable from a human person, but they're able to do tasks. For example, Delta Airlines is a LivePerson customer. And when you call in to the app, and it's a Delta app, but it's actually LivePerson that's powering that, and you've missed your flight, what it's doing in the background is it's kicking off all these intelligent agents, and it's actually finding and it's anticipating, based on your travel needs, alternative flights, or it's doing cross-selling or upselling. And again, you have to moderate that because it's a customer experience issue. But we're seeing AI, and I've seen the transition from the mainframe to the PC, to the internet, to e-commerce and everything, but what I've seen in AI in the last couple of years, and particularly in the last 12 months, is really astounding. And, it's only gaining and accelerating. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see where all this goes, but it's happening, and it's creating real and substantive business value for companies out there.
So, Jim, I'd like to ask you a corollary question to that. Let's go back to your Wayfair example. An amazing company with a huge selection, and you talked about some ways that they're digitizing their collection and using augmented reality and whatnot. I imagine that brings a lot of cultural challenges to the organization and to the customer base. And just to give you a heads up, Mohammed, I'm going to ask you a related governance question on this. So, Jim, could you talk a little bit about change management and how you move the organization along at the speed of technology? That's probably a bigger challenge than implementing the technology.
Yeah, that is the actual bigger challenge. And I think it not only is a workforce issue, but it's a societal issue. And we've seen this many, many times with technology disruptions, where candidly the workforce technology moves faster than the workforce can accommodate it and change to it and adapt to it. And you're seeing that right now with AI. And I think with AI, and one of the challenges that we just had a board meeting last week at one of the companies that we were looking at what it was doing to the accounting function, the ability to actually use AI, and this is off the shelf, OpenAI, ChatGPT, really be able to anticipate based on a 10Q, all of the questions that the analyst may ask based on, changes to the 10Q from the previous 10Q. And I turned to one of my board members who was the CFO of a company that you would know, and he looked at me and just said, "Oh my God, like this is going to have a profound impact on people's jobs." Because when I think about the company that I was at, I had 4 or 5 people doing this for me. And by the way, ChatGPT does it better than any of those people can do, because one of the advantages of AI is it can look at a tremendous corpus of knowledge, and it doesn't get tired. It doesn't, go for coffee breaks. And I'm not arguing that, and advocating that we replace all the humans with AI. So I think that it did and will have a profound impact. And I think a lot of people right now are very leery of the technology. So when you talk about, and this is something that I think is incredibly important when it comes to AI, is the fact that AI is a augmentation technology. Yes, it on the fringes it will replace and probably replace and eliminate some jobs. But I really believe that the killer app is to make people better. Because look, AI, I mean, there's a lot of hype around AI, and AI is really a predictive engine, at its simplest form. It anticipates, contextually and sequentially what's going to happen. AI still, I mean, I joke, I mean, my partner's Taiwanese, and Siri can't even understand her accent. And it's like, I joke with her all the time. It's like, look, if Siri can't really translate your accent, I don't think it's going to take over the world quite yet. So I really believe that there is a place for technology to make people better. But to your point, people, they see along a wide gamut of the spectrum, from the opportunity that AI presents to the threat that it prevents. And I think you have to be very, very transparent with people in the organization, and just tell people, like, hey, here's what it will do and here's what it won't do. But at the end of the day, I think that there are, and Mohammed talked about this a few minutes ago, there's all kinds of issues with data security, privacy, cybersecurity, et cetera, et cetera. And, again, I think that has to be taken into account. And it's really interesting, because you want to go fast with AI in some areas, but you also want to go slow in other areas and anticipate problems. And again, to your point, it's a massive change management problem. And then from a customer perspective, really quickly, you're really seeing like a bimodal distribution. And, as somebody who's 60 years old, I'll kind of, I'll make an age statement. You're really seeing the young, 30 and under adopt AI much, much more rapidly than a generation older than them. And, that's going to be an interesting set of challenges, because, and it's an excellent opportunity for somebody who's going into grad school right now, because they are going to be not only the benefactor of technology, but they're going to be largely impacted by it the most, because they're going to see it throughout their entire career, where candidly, I'm really seeing it on the tail end of my career.
Thanks for that perspective, Jim. So, Mohammed, I alluded to governance. I think about governance, culture, regulation. Can you talk a little bit about some of the specific aspects of the curriculum, and maybe some of the guests that you're going to be bringing into the classroom, and the experiential learning that would help a student bridge this gap between the technology, that's on paper, and theoretical and how it actually gets implemented profitably, successfully to develop a competitive advantage in business.
Sure. I'm going to seize on like the example Jim gave from Wayfair, right? So just think about this exercise where you're going to make this significant amount of investments in enabling this digitization of images. And I know I've worked on some of these things actually in my experience with retail in research. But as somebody, like if you are a manager who is in this conversation and you don't have this understanding of what technology can do, what machine learning algorithms you can potentially sort of enable, what are the things you can do with it, what kind of personalization you can do, what user experience you can change. And if you just worried always about the business side of things, right, which is what a traditional MBA training would be, you wouldn't be actually in the right position to make this call for Wayfair. And it's not just Wayfair being a digital native company. This would be the true case for any kind of legacy company we can think of, whether it's GE or whether it's, like Boeing or Eli Lilly, or, if you think about a car company like, like a BMW, which is no longer a car. It's basically all about user experience, right? Now, if a car is all about user experience, and I know somebody who just recently got a new car, and he's like, I can't drive my car. I mean, what do you mean? What do you mean by you can't drive your car? Well, basically, yes, he can steer his car, but he doesn't understand the car, right? Because the car is all digital products right now. With that comes a lot of data that is being collected, right? With that, there is a lot of details that's observed by the firms that is used to personalize the experience of these users. There comes the governance issues. There comes the privacy issue. There comes regulations. The regulation in California is quite different than the regulation in Indiana and, in EU, right? So if as a business graduate, you don't understand the difference, you're assuming that I'm going to build this product where I'm going to collect every single bit of data that I can find, you've missed the whole idea of regulation. You don't know what the governance, that data governance means. Who owns the data within the firm? Who authorizes you to use it or not? Even within an AI algorithm that can do fascinating things may not be actually allowed because you might need explainability if you are in the medical or regulated industry like pharmaceuticals. If you don't understand these differences, you miss that point. So I think our curriculum, we are very intentional about that, right? So we actually make sure students understand DevOps. So you actually understand whether or not you can actually collect all this data and how the software lifecycle will even work in scale, right? You can think about all kinds of algorithms you might not be able to scale. So that understanding is technical understanding as a business manager, but that's all at the same time, you also need to understand what does it mean to own all this data in terms of my cybersecurity? What kind of concerns should I have? What does it mean to have all this data on the cloud now? That's where most of this is residing, right? So we're bringing in guest lecturers. We have relationships with all the largest firms in the country, right? Where we can actually bring them to also give us first-hand experience on what does security look like on a CRM system like Salesforce, right? And that's something students can get a first-hand experience on. But I guess the bigger question is we're making students think about these issues and analytically analyze how do we really look at these actual business issues and make a decision. That's exactly where AI still fails. So I think I'm totally with Jim. I don't believe that AI will replace all of us. AI will replace and change some jobs. Some jobs will be gone. At the margin, we're not going to see some jobs that are going to be gone. That happened with every technological sort of revolution. But it's the people who know how to use AI, leverage AI, we're going to replace and outpace the people who are behind in that. And that's the mindset we have as we design in the team.
Yeah. Well, I'll add my vote to Jim's and Mohammed's. I don't think AI is going to replace everybody. I recall Jim and I are old enough to remember when the internet was a new thing and everybody thought that was going to put so many businesses out of business. And now, of course, every business is on the internet. Now, Mohammed, you mentioned something interesting about data that I just had a personal experience with driving data and the data that's collected. I was telling a friend of mine that I signed up for a new auto insurance policy, and if I download this app on my cell phone, it'll collect all my driving history and all of that, and it'll give me a discount, which I thought was a wonderful thing. I'm a safe driver, I can get a discount. And he said, that's an awful thing. I don't want anybody knowing where I'm going, and then if, God forbid I were to get in an accident, they'd subpoena my driving records and all of that. So just even that simple example makes you realize that embracing technology may be wonderful from a customer experience, but it might also cost you some customers, and that's a very simple example. Jim, I wanted to we have a question in the chat, and I want to encourage others to feel free to put questions in the chat. So I'm going to change this question up a little bit, but what do you see as some of the biggest challenges to identifying use cases and implementing technology to address them? And maybe I'll put you on the spot. Maybe you can give me an example where you saw one recently that just went wrong. It was either a false start or backfired, or maybe was not most effectively implemented.
Yeah, Mohammed alluded to this. I think with AI particularly, but all along all the data science continuum, data at its foundation is the most important ingredient, for lack of a better word, or catalyst for doing something. So AI loves large bodies of data. The challenge is that most companies, particularly that aren't digitally native, have not built comprehensive data strategies. So when you go and try to implement, so everybody's saying, I need AI like yesterday, and I've got a consulting firm that does a lot of this work. And what you find is that more often than not, the company doesn't have the data, single sources of truth. It's not clean data. It's balkanized, or it's in different databases that aren't architecturally easy to access, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So foundationally, this is what we learned at the early days of Amazon. We collected a lot of data without really understanding how we would actually use it, but we had cardinal rules around it in terms of data quality, how to curate it, and how to archive it and things like that. And by the way, when we implemented things like Prime and some of our global logistics systems, the data did not need to be architected. We could focus solely on the business process and the business problem that we were solving. The second impediment is usually, and I see this all the time, at every place I've worked, I saw it, you would think we could solve this problem at Google, we didn't. I would walk into meetings and people would be solving, they were well down the road of the solution. This is something I learned at Purdue being an engineer. First principles. Can please somebody articulate what problem are we trying to solve here? And particularly, I think with things like AI, it's a bright, shiny object. And, it's one of these things where I've got to have it. Well, my partner and I talked to a CEO a few months ago, and, he said, we've got to do something in AI. Okay, why? This is a tech company. And he said, well, my competitors are doing it. What are they actually doing with it? Well, I'm not sure, but they're talking about it in their annual report, and they're talking about it in their earnings calls. And, we really kind of had to walk them off the ledge. And we were, again, let's talk about the problem that you're trying to go solve and really understand that first and foremost. Okay. An example of where it's kind of failed monumentally is, and again, I won't give you the specifics on this one, but this is an example where I saw AI being deployed all over the organization. And, I think the intent was right, but it was one of these issues where everybody should be experimenting with AI with no concerns around data privacy, no concerns around data management. And what they were doing was they were, with no controls, by the way. And you had a lot of, we can go, and type in, you can access chat, Perplexity, Claude, Gemini, you kind of name all these things, Copilot, they're all out there. With this person, the members of, what employees were doing was they were exposing company data publicly, and it led to a massive privacy issue because they didn't recognize they didn't understand how the technology works. And, again, I want to be careful because this is one of those, tightrope deals. You want to ensure that people are experimenting with it, but you want to have guardrails around it too, because particularly with AI, there's a lot of edge cases where you can get yourself into trouble quickly with things like privacy. And, Mom had alluded to this. We tried to pass an AI bill here in California, and it was shot down because it's just too new, and people are like, well, we don't want to over constrain it. We realize that there have to be controls on it, but we don't want to legislate it to the point where people can't experiment. So this is going to be a very dynamic area over the next few years. And, fortunately or unfortunately, if you think about it, I start my day out by reading all the trade rags and all of the research that's coming out. Every day there's a new model. There's a new use case for a model. And I'm in it every day. I do a ton of work with the Boston Consulting Group around Gen AI. I can't keep track of it. So I kind of know what I'm talking about. And I can't imagine being, dipped into the deep end and trying to figure out wow, where do I start?
Jim, you've raised a good point there. I think a lot of people are playing around with ChatGPT and Copilot and others, as you've said, and they're putting their company data into those systems, which are open systems, and exposing themselves to risk. And those create compliance issues, data compliance issues for the organization. And, just something as simple as being educated on that is important. Mohammed, so we have a question in the chat about Google using AI to produce 25% of their code. So I want to riff on that a little bit and ask you, what types of expertise do you think students are going to take out of the classroom that will be actionable? Is this example where maybe somebody that knows how to code and is going to go back in industry as a coder would be leveraging the tools in your program to be more efficient coders, or, as you said, to augment other jobs? Talk a little bit about how you envision this curriculum creating actionable skills that students can use upon graduation.
Sure. So I guess, first of all, we fully recognize that Google is going to do that. But more importantly, we actually encourage all our students to recognize that you should not be thinking about coding from scratch anymore. You should be thinking about how to think about the problem. I think what Jim was talking about earlier, right? So we are training students to first think about, so how do you approach the problem? And then how do you go to ChatGPT and get the initial code out? And then how do we actually take that and judge whether or not there is hallucination, and perhaps take to another tool to sort of help that hallucination out? Because at the end of the day, augmentation means you own the output. So we want our students to also realize that you cannot go back to your boss and say, oh, I did this because ChatGPT gave me all the code. I'm sorry, this is all wrong and caused all the trouble. No, that's not an option. You own all the output. So we're fully equipping our students to ramp up their productivity. So the classes are far more sort of now into decision-making thinking, then spending a lot more time on debugging. And that's a fascinating thing that happened to our classes now. We don't have to spend time on scratch levels or code writing or, thinking about debugging codes, but rather how do we take all of this to the problem that we started with? And what does it mean for the answer that we have? So I think if you think about a student who is coming from STEM background to our program, they already come with a lot of perhaps coding experience, perhaps some mathematical background, right? But how do you really take that mindset to analyze business problems where technology is now at the center of it? That's where our curriculum is now. And that's what we're doing.
Right. So, Jim, both you and Mohammed made reference to digital native companies. And I'm fond of this term frenemy. So I imagine you work with a lot of companies, maybe you're consulting for them, a lot of incumbent companies that have a very old, complicated tech debt that they're wondering how they can modernize with some of these tools. Can you give us a sense for how are those companies sort of shuddering or trembling in their boots, waiting for some new digital native tech startup to come and eat their lunch and put them out of business? Are they proactively embracing new technology? Could you talk a little bit about how the high-level executive at these incumbent companies are reacting to that? Because I think ultimately, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mohammed, most of our graduates from this program are going to go into incumbent companies that are looking to, revise
their majority of the economy, right?
Absolutely. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful question. I actually sit on the board of a pallet company. It's called Brambles out of Australia, and we manage CHEP is another name for it. We manage 600 million pallets worldwide. And this is wooden pallets. And trust me, this is about as industrial as you can get. And it's interesting because over the last 4 years, and I've been on the board for 5 years now, but over the last 4 years, we've gone through a digital transformation. And, we talk about our competition. And I always, probably to a fault, when I'm at the board meeting, I usually talk about the competition. We've got the traditional competitors that could go build these pallets probably better than we can, but they've got capital constraints and things like that. But the real competitor is the company that looks at this from a digital perspective. And the reason that we've invested, we've gone through a 4+ year journey that's not done yet of, hiring 400 data scientists and revamping the tech org. Now, the challenge, it's fascinating because, we've created tremendous value for the company and the stock has doubled. And I'll give you an example, so for a large distributor or a large grocer in Australia and New Zealand, what we're doing is we're using digital technology. And from the time that berries are picked in the field until the time that they actually show up in the grocery store. And it turns out that the temperature and humidity that those berries are exposed to in real time dictates the spoilage. And I'm not an expert in the grocery industry, but the amount of spoilage that goes on is unbelievable in the entire value chain, particularly for fresh berries. It's on the order of 20 to 30%. So by instrumenting with digital or temp sensors and humidity sensors, we're able to actually dynamically route berries in a way that we get the freshest ones to the store the quickest. And we've cut the spoilage in half. Now, that's thinking about your business in a very different way. 2 years ago, we would have talked about selling wooden pallets, and now we're selling intelligence that's creating, really incredible, not only a differentiated value, but more monetary value for both the customer, and it's showing up in our bottom line. And so again, Rich, what you said at the very beginning is every company is a tech company now, whether they want to be or not. And I think, again, it's a little bit about, only the paranoid survive. Andy Grove said that at Intel. And I think you've got to look at your business in a very different way. And, you can't stick your head in the sand, but you've got to look at business a lot differently because you now have not only your traditional competitors, but you've got a whole bunch of upstarts. And, Larry and Sir, when Facebook, I was at Google when Facebook was really going through its renaissance era or its hyper growth stage. And at every Friday afternoon meeting with Larry and Sergey, somebody would inevitably ask, like, oh my God, are you petrified about, Facebook? And is that going to put Google out of business? And Larry would answer the question by saying, I'm not worried about the competition that I know. I'm worried about the startup in Menlo Park or in Palo Alto that's going to come at search in a very, very different way. And that's OpenAI today. And I would argue that, they're doing search in a very, very different way. And I don't want to get into a conversation about, the competitiveness of Copilot or Gemini or any of those, but, people are going to Perplexity and OpenAI to do search more so than Google. And if Google announced earnings results last week, and their ad revenue is definitely impacted by that. So again, you have to look at your competitors in a very, very different light because of digital technology. And unfortunately, the pace of innovation and the pace of disruption usually increases along with those changes.
That was a great story. That I imagine the Internet of Things is going to change the way every business, old industry business, thinks about their business. And as you're talking about the curriculum earlier, Mohammed, I think about the operations class I took in my MBA program, where everything is focused on driving cost out of the system. And, your berry picking example is less about producing a blueberry less expensively and more about driving more value for the customer. And that's a totally different way of thinking about it. That's a top line as opposed to a middle line way of thinking. Well, we only have time for maybe one more question, so I'm going to direct one of the questions from the chat to Mohammed here. What opportunities are available to students to explore innovation and entrepreneurship, maybe in a hands-on way here with the program?
Well, I think Purdue is one of the top places in the whole world in terms of startups, in terms of patents, in terms of having an ecosystem that is actually very rich. So Purdue Innovate is well known for its ability to really inspire students to do new things. And so in addition to the curriculum, students have direct access to a lot of sort of incubator kind of environment, VCs and others through Purdue Innovate. Plus, we have the Technology Landscape Speaker Series, where we are bringing in speakers to really come and talk about also the recent innovations that are happening. A wide spectrum of places. It could be from biology, it could be from chemistry, right? Because at the end of the day, that knowledge is important for students to also have as they go out there and think about, what can I do with I actually believe the jobs are all mostly going to be in the traditional firms because those are the ones that are going to need the technology-minded executives, right? And if you think about the difference between an MBA and an MBT, an MBA will not produce these kind of executives who are actually thinking about technology and how technology can give me a pallet company and an advantage. Your idea could be, okay, how could I go get some more trees locked in so I can actually have my raw material costs going down or whatever? But is a value creation idea through technology is critical. And there's a lot of opportunity, whether you're a trailer, a builder manufacturer, whether you're a home manufacturer, whatever you manufacture, there's a lot of value that can be created that's still not unlocked. And that's where I think we want to take our students through entrepreneurship, through other sort of job roles that they can blow up here.
Right. Well, thanks for that. We're just about at time. So I wanted to thank all of our attendees for joining us today. I wanted to thank Jim, not only for his time today and those great stories, but also for being a wonderful advisor. And Mohammed, of course, your time as the mastermind of this program, and we're certainly excited about it. We love all our advisory board members equally, but you can see how awesome Jim is. We have many others like him that are bringing real-life experience over many years into the classroom, advising us on the curriculum, helping us and our students network with others so that the curriculum is up to the minute. So just a huge resource for not only for Mohammed, but also for our students. So again, Jim, just really thankful for that. We do have a number of other webinars and in-person sessions coming up that will be similar to this. So if you want some additional information, you can join us for any of those. We'd encourage you to tell your friends. And if you have any lingering questions you want to reach out to us directly, you can do that as well. So with that, I'll adjourn us for the session. Again, thanks, Jim. Thanks, Mohammed. And thanks, everybody joining us online.